Hello, my YouTube people. Now, I realized the last video I did, my air conditioner was making a bunch of noise, so I've had to turn my AC off to do this, which means it could get hot. Hence the wife beater, which I hate that people call these that. It's sort of uncouth. So here's the thing. I just got a comment on the last video I did. I'm still around. About let's see here. Let me just go ahead and read it. This is from Jake in the Box 17. Have you ever thought about moving back to China? Can you re-release a video about Wuhan? I might move there and would really appreciate any tips on life in Wuhan. Now, I did answer this video, or I did answer, and Joey Smith actually also answered Jake here in comment, but I'm going to go ahead and do a video about it because I think that most people who are going to give me the time of day deserve that from me as well. So here's the thing. No, I'm not. I'm not planning on doing anything of like. China was something that I had to do because I was in a situation where I couldn't get work where I was, nor could I afford to move, nor was anyone at the time anywhere else in the state or country that I knew willing to take me in so I could get started someplace else. It was an act of desperation. It was an enjoyable time in my life, but at the same time, it was a lot of work. I mean, I taught in the ESL training center market. I taught for English first, which didn't really work out. Then I went on to teach for New Dynamic Institute. And then I went to teach for Linguaphone, which was an awesome job as far as ESL training centers go. However, they were embezzled from, and when a Chinese company gets embezzled from heavily, they tend to just close the doors, and that's exactly what they did one day. So I essentially was sort of stuck there without a job during a time where they were sort of changing the policy on, verifying degrees a lot better and stuff like that. And I just was not having any real luck finding anything. So I ended up having to come home. And for those of you that haven't followed, I spent from 2009 till I moved up here to Dallas-Fort Worth in 2012 or 13 in various states of homelessness. I slept on the street, I slept in homeless shelters, I slept on a lot of couches. When I did have a job a few times, I rented a room, but I never really had a place to call my own. The closest thing I had to a place to call my own was a hotel room that I rented for about 6 weeks, and then an apartment that I rented for about 4 or 5 months until I lost that job. But to quit rambling there, I just wouldn't recommend expatting, especially to China. There's a lot of turmoil kind of going on with China right now. They've changed their status in the world a great deal. They're trying really, really hard to be a more aggressive superpower, and they've done, as far as my research goes, a few more naughty things than usual. Now, I love China in a lot of ways. It did become my, kind of unofficial home away from home, and it did take care of me for a while. But it's just not the place that it was. It's kind of heyday for expatriatism is past. I worked with people of all kinds of nationalities there, and most of them that I know have either moved back to their country of origin or moved off somewhere else. The only people that I know that are still kicking around in China and Wuhan are people who got married to someone, and that woman is just not going to move. Just not going to move to the States. They don't want to, and that's that. Which is kind of a sad situation in some ways. I mean, sorry guys if any of you I know are going to be watching this, but I wouldn't want to not be able to come home, you know. Now, look, I used to be kind of a libtard, but I've grown to be a lot more libertarian in the last couple of years. I really kind of like shooting guns, and I you know, I do like a lot of the ideals about like old America, original America. I think that what we have now is kind of not that, but it's still salvageable. And I think that we can still do more things than most cultures can. I had a hard time finding a place to shoot guns in China. It was almost impossible. It would have required going out to some farm somewhere and paying some farmer for a bunch of ammo, or, you know, maybe a military base or something like that, but they would make it hard. You get tired of the same food all the time in McDonald's. There's just a lot, there's just a lot more variety and choice here, for me. Now, you can do without that for a while, and if that's really what you want to do, then, you know, by all means expatriate, but keep in mind that China's currency is also not as cheap as it once was, and also the cost of living there has just gone up. You used to pay, you know, 3 RMB for a bowl of fried rice, like a good-sized bowl of fried rice. That's gone up to 5. Now that's considerably more for most Chinese people, and you know, a lot of Laowai, a lot of Westerners would complain about that too. Part of what made China cool to go to was that it was cheap. That, you know, as an expat, you were making like more a month than the president of the country. and you could live that way a bit. And I think those things have just gone. They're just not that anymore. So, you know, I can't in my good conscience recommend really doing that. I think that there's a lot to be said for sort of making it where you're at. Now, I don't know where Jake's from. I don't know where Joey's from. I mean, I've talked to Joey a bit. I think he might be American. So, for example, like a lot of the people that don't tend to want to go home anytime real soon, Australians. Now, that's a good example. Australians will expatriate like everywhere. They'll go everywhere in the fucking world, and it's like they're never gonna go home to Australia, you know. Which I don't quite get. I mean, Australia is not such a bad country. Well, at least it wasn't until it got sort of inundated with foreigners. But see, the thing about Australia is they'll turn that spigot off too. It's not like the U.S. where you just keep letting them pour in. You know, they'll say, hey, no more Chinese, no more, you know, for a certain number of years, or just until they decide to turn it back on. And there's something to be said for that. But once they're in, they're in. So I think that that's starting to, you know, bother a lot of people from places like the States or Australia that have had like really open immigration policies for a while. The English, a lot of Brits, they'll stay in China for friggin' ever. And the consistent answer I get for that is that it's less expensive to live in China, and in a lot of ways it's more convenient. Just to drive my car in the UK is, it's a total hassle. They tax the crap out of you for it. And I get stuff like that, but I don't know. To me, I just wouldn't want to be away from home forever. I did consider moving back when I still wasn't finding a job. I talked to a couple of friends about it, but without a degree, without an actual degree that the director of studies of the school you're gonna go work for can actually call and verify, there's no point. Like Joey said in this comment, they just don't forge that stuff anymore. You just don't get away with that. And that might be to a large extent because the Chinese don't want a bunch of foreigners in their country. They kind of feel the same way about it. Mexico doesn't want a bunch of Guatemalans in their country, just like, it works, it's a double-edged sword, this whole thing. My beverage today is a Barks root beer and Diet Coke Suicide, which I actually hate because it's all full of cancer and high fructose corn syrup. But there wasn't any other choice except fluoridated water. I don't have too many more minutes to speak here, but I just maintain that if you're wanting to expatriate because you're having trouble at home, try and make that situation work. If you're having trouble with living, move into an RV. You can probably finance that. You can find RVs on Craigslist for $4,000 that are in pretty good shape. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And I'm really loving it. For someone who's single, my girlfriend comes and stays with me for days on end, and we're very comfortable as a couple in here. So I couldn't necessarily say that you wouldn't be able to have a roommate or a significant other if you did that. If it's a situation where you want to go and screw a bunch of Asian girls, trust me, they're overrated. Sorry, girls, but that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. And I would suspect that anybody who's been with a good number of actual Asian women would agree with me there. Hugely overrated. Crazy white girls are much more, fun in some ways, albeit, you got to make sure to stay away from the really unstable ones. If you're just wanting to go spend some time in another country for a while, then go do that. Take a sabbatical if you can. See if you can get a little time out of the country. But don't necessarily expatriate it. It just isn't for everybody. A lot of people that I knew that wound up in China didn't last 2 weeks. That somebody new would show up and, they would be having issues with the food or whatever, or this, that, or the other, and they'd be gone before you know it. And that's a lot of a waste on kind of their part. That's like buying a passport, buying a plane ticket, not getting reimbursed for that plane ticket, getting paid very little for the experience altogether. Then again, I know other people who went there for just a vacation and ended up staying forever, or a long, long time. My brother was insisting on leaving before I did, and he ended up staying a little longer than me, so, that's how it goes. Anyway, I gotta get this video cut here and get my AC back on. Goemonronin, signing out. Hey, in comments, just call me Goemon. It saves keystrokes.